Right. Just quickly on Renge, I just wanted to mention a collection of a dozen Renge I published with Simon Hansen in Australia, and they're all Australian flavoured Renge, very much outback flora and fauna. Thanks, Gary. And Gary wrote something, a blurb for us for that. So that's called Ancient Bloodlines. And if you just Google that, Ancient Bloodlines, and then probably my name, and then Renge, you'll find a free download of it on Caroline Scan's Hedgegrow site. But I can send all the links to Carolyn later of where to find my book and that link. And I came up with an unusual way of presenting it. I called it the mossy ripple effect, and it's basically where each verse opens and then the verse before it stays there in grey, so it's over the page. So it's quite interesting. It's hard to explain, but you'll see it when you read it. So, okay. So thanks very much for inviting me along to give a presentation. When I thought about it, I thought, gosh, I could go on forever about Haiga and certainly show a lot of my work. So why not do that? But I know I do have a time limit, and I'm not quite sure what it is, Gary, but I think probably 30 minutes you want me to go for, somewhere around there. Just pull me up when it's time to, or put your hand up or something when it's time to pull it up a bit. So, because I know everyone's got things on. So
I'll give a thumbs up when it's time.
Okay, that'd be great. Yep. So I'd like to start. Some people might know that I've got a YouTube channel, and I'll send that link to that later. So I'll start with a film in a minute, but just, I guess, briefly, my experience in Haiga has sort of come from starting to write haiku probably about 25 years ago now. And then I always loved art, always drew and painted, and in recent times took photographs. So, and I love design too. So I guess for me, bringing all those things together was just wonderful. I could use this form that we all love, haiku, and create art with it. But what I always did from the start was I wanted my haiku to stand alone. So I quite often would send haiku out to be published, and then I might select one of those haiku that's been published and just create some art for it, and try and think of juxtaposition, shift, link and shift, not to try and directly illustrate the haiku, though a lot of the Haiga that I've studied and looked at from traditional Japan, and that is very much straight illustrations, but in a very beautiful, sort of minimal, not fussy, hurried sort of way, just beautiful light strokes, which always appealed to me. And I try and make that part of my practice to keep the ink painting part, as well as using all the wonderful tools that are available to us. And one of my loves at the moment is just to use my phone, my cell phone, because the cameras are so good on them now. And then just use something called like Snapseed, which is all one word, Snapseed, which is a free app from Google. And I'd love to do a little training video on that one day. It does actually have little training videos in it, but it's just amazing what you can do with that. Change the colors, you can put filters on, and you can put text on as well, which is great for us if you're creating Haiga. And yeah, really there's no limits to where you can go or what you can do. I mean, some people might say, yeah, but I don't know how you got there. I love this piece, but it's not like a painting. I know that a painting, you've created it with brushstrokes. But when they just see a finished artwork that's been done through a digital medium, they say, oh, well, you just push one button. Well, no, I mean, it can be you can spend hours on something in the digital realm, and you can take it in all sorts of directions. So that's the beauty of it, and that's what I love. So I wish I'm always saying I should be painting more, getting in the studio and painting and get myself away from a computer screen. But it's just the immediacy of being able to change things so quickly and take something on a creative journey that I love. So I'd like to start with a couple of films, and I will read to them, which is something they don't have my voice online, they just have music, but I'll read to them. So I'll kick off with one. So hopefully you're just seeing a big black screen. And now some music.
Ron, we're only seeing you, not the black screen.
I'm not sure why that is. That happened the other day when I tried this.
Did you click share screen?
That's it. See, with all my technical know-how, I just forgot to hit share screen. So, all right, share. Thanks for that. So you should see a grey screen now. So I'll start. So I'll just check if someone could tell me you're seeing a black screen with Ron C. Moss on it.
Yes.
Yes, okay, thanks. Right, we'll continue then. Ancient tree, the sound of emptiness. Lifting hands, meridians of energy, moving as one. One flower for each breath of white. Sister Moon, the night songs deep in the valley. Sitting alone with Buddha rock, sounds of the sea. Okay, so that's that one. You'll see in that one I used, as I go through some Haiga later on, individual pieces, I'll explain different ways and approaches, but you'll see in that one I used photographs, and I used shapes of the photograph in the background just to help make a wallpaper, if you like, and there's design elements there that I enjoy with white space, using seals and chops. So we'll just go to another one that's similar, but a little bit different. Spring dew, a dragonfly opens to the light. Early frost, a glint of sunlight from the locksmith's keys. High country storm, flocks of sheep huddle against the fence line. Meditation, deep in a white forest, the sound of frost. First sunlight, a translucent bait worm in Dad's fingers. the light steps of a hooded plover on sacred ground. Early sunrise catches the spider in a web of light. Simmering rhubarb, mother plays ragtime on broken keys. Dead thistles, the feel of a key in a rusty lock. So weary, leaf upon leaf, the pathway home. Moonlit hut, rocks piled on rocks to make a home. Okay, so that's that. So I'll go to a presentation of individual Haiga now. Full screen moved. So you should see a seal saying fire moss. It's on its side just for this presentation. I wanted to create a reflection. So just briefly, people might not know that this was carved by a very well-known carver in Sydney, in New South Wales, Australia. And the top characters there are fire, kanji for fire, and moss. So fire moss was a artist name. Traditionally, you're given an artist name by a mentor or someone who is very special to you. And I'm very fortunate it was given to me by Steve Addis, who writes haiku and also is a very well-known translator of Japanese and writes essays, and it's got some beautiful books on Zen paintings, ink paintings, Japanese Haiga. So yeah, it was wonderful to have that relationship with him there. So just briefly, Haiga, or haikai drawing, is a style of Japanese painting based on the aesthetics of haiku, from which haiku poetry derives, which often accompanies such poem in a single piece. Like the poetic forms it is accompanied, Haiga was based on simple yet often profound observations of the everyday world. That's a couple of my brushes. I've got a bit of a collection of the beautiful brushes. So nice you don't want to sort of use them because get them all inky. So you can tell that one on the bottom's not been used because it's sheep hair, that one, I think. So I thought I'd start with this one, given the recent award. Bloodwood Moon, a starving dingo paces the rain shadow. In case you didn't know, a bloodwood is a tree in the Australian outback. Very evocative sounding name, and I put it with the moons. The sound, musicality is so important. I think Brad gave that talk on musicality and the sound in haiku, which I very strongly feel is an important thing when we're writing haiku. We got blood, O's there, moon, shadow, dingo. So there's a lovely, it's amazing what you can pack into a haiku. There's almost a song there with O's. So and on the right, that's a watercolor that I did some years ago. So I'm sort of moving a bit more towards abstract. That's sort of semi-abstract landscape. Another watercolor, positioning it in a different way on the paper. Waiting for a red moon, the glitter of frost. So that's handwritten. I'm always trying to advocate to people to, if you can, just write, use your own calligraphy, your own handwriting. It's wonderful to see. It's very personal handwriting. You'll need software if you don't actually write it directly onto your art. If you want to put it on a photo or something, you'll need a software to do that. But the easiest way is you just write on a white piece of paper, scan it, and then bring it into your software and then change the background. But anyway, moving on. This is sort of a combination of watercolors and also textures that I imported in. I love scanning different textures of things, which they can make strong impact. Heavy seas, out of a day moon, a diving tern. A tern is a bird here in Australia. Some very traditional watercolor, ink painting that I did quite a number of years ago now. First light, a hawk dragonfly, beads with dew. So you can see simple ink painting can have quite profound effect with the allowing white space around the image. This was actually a photo that was taken way back, stripped to very minimal, so it almost looks like a painting, ink painting. I didn't set out to make it look like an ink painting, it's just the way it developed. Another early ink painting using my seals and my signature. This is what you can do where you can put a sequence together. So this is using seaweed, a photo of some seaweed here in Tasmania, and then using the background of some sand and water. Backgrounds are an important part of Haiga, I think. If you're doing modern digital Haiga, just adds another nice design element. This was a sequence, all at sea, ghost waves, an albatross takes the updraft, white sands, the stingray glides over dark ripples, hard to windward, a seal dives under the rainstorm. This was something I did, a translation of Stevens, of Basho, very famous one. It's kind of, I've gone pretty crazy in this one, as you might see, with red. But this was a combination of photos, textures, different textures, rust and all sorts of things. And the photograph itself was blurred and manipulated in all sorts of ways. This was also a photograph, but it also, people probably think I'm crazy combining elements, but it's a photograph and an ink painting. Well, sort of some ink thrown around on a piece of paper, and I combined it with a photo I had. And going a little bit back just to straight photographs with, because often your subject will very much influence the way you design and how you want to present it. So the blue eyes and the eyes were very much blue of this wallaby. It wasn't, I didn't put them in later. It's because of the colour of they go that colour when they're reflected in the snow. So there was a lot of snow around at that time. I actually took this photograph through the window of a hut up in the snowfields here. Just a simple pencil drawing on paper. Starburst, the gunpowder tea unfurls. This was a bit different in that this was for an Australian online kukai, longest night, Tasmanian tigers pace the underworld. So as people might know, the Tasmanian tiger is considered extinct and has been since 1930s due to, well, hunting it, stupidity really of the government back then. They hunted it they put a bounty on its head because the sheep people, the farmers and that wanted rid of it because it occasionally took a lamb or something, but they were probably not much bigger than a dog. And they were very much related to, their marsupials related to wallabies. So this was achieved by a pencil drawing, but then it was imported into Photoshop and inverted. So everything that's black goes to white and vice versa. So it just created a nice effect. I could have drawn it on a black piece of paper, but I did it the other way. Windsong in the curve of a river. So something like this was done completely on my cell phone, photographed, filter put on, colours changed, and the actual the way the haiku is presented is just an option of text in Snapseed. I brushed aside the stars to hear the heavens breathe. So it's probably a rare tunker from me. I don't write a lot of them, but occasionally do. This was a photograph just sitting on a table somewhere. I think, like, as we know, when we write haiku, we constantly, we're more observant of the world, I think, and we see things and, wow, yeah, that would make a nice haiku. And it's the same for me with imagery. I might see a photo or something that I think, yes, that's very haiku-like, and I could do something with that. So, meditation, deep in a white forest, the sound of frost that I read before. So this is frosty leaves. This was all done in Snapseed on my cell phone. This is probably an old favourite. This one, it was a combination of a lot of things: ink painting, the background. I used my seal quite large there, stuck a raven on top of it, and the leaf is actually a photo. So yeah, there's a combination of a lot of different elements, very mixed media, that one. But I think overall it has a lovely impact. This has sort of gone crazy and it was originally a photograph, just changing the colours, duplicating it a little bit, blurring it. I've done a number of these sort of misty, sort of atmospheric pieces that I quite enjoy. Just traditional watercolor. It's always nice to come up with ways of presenting something. You'll see that I've used the watercolor again in the background. I do use Photoshop a lot. I've been using it for 20 years. So the beauty of Photoshop is if you can think of, you import something like a background, and Photoshop is basically layers. So you can keep layering, you can keep putting things on top of things, and then changing that layer. And then at the end, when you're finished, you flatten it, and then voila, you create an image of some sort. Curling to sleep, the day's miles again in my bones. This hangs on my wall. It's a bit of an old favourite. It's a beautiful piece of seaweed that was on a rock. This was photographed with a very low, early digital camera, but it still managed to create a nice shot. And I used just some rice paper in the background, just a scanned rice paper. One of my favourites that is actually in one of my film slideshows as well, called Slow Light. This was photographed in the middle of a quite unusual morning. It was heavy frost, passing by a single thought in autumn gold. I actually tried to make the text in this part feel like it's part of the image into the background of the image. So, and just another one tied to the shore, each thread of sunlight. Waning moon, the heaviness in a dying moth's wing. The photograph, of course, textual background. Tomatoes ripen in summer heat, skin on skin. So this was, I do enjoy still life. I like to photograph all sorts of things in still life. So this was a way of just coming up with a presentation for that. This was a pencil drawing. I did a series of these. I quite often work in series. Like if I come up with a design element I like, I will quite often do half a dozen or more of them. But basically this was also a drawing scanned and put into Photoshop. And then I used a texture I really like in the background. And then once again, I inverted the image to make it white, or the actual pencil lines white. Another one, old windmill blades sweep past a shooting star. I really like the lines of this one and how I managed to get the windmill to actually flow, feel like it was spinning and a star in the background. Starry night, what's left of my life is enough. This was a very simple drawing, once again, that I just inverted and turned black into white, or white into black, I should say. Or black into white? Yeah, black and white. I was right the first time. Yeah, this is lots of design elements in this. These are actually some of my painted bamboo, but I layered, talking about layers before, I layered over the top beautiful calligraphy and seals that I just gathered. I will say that I always try and use all my own photographs and things. I don't go online and search for stuff and to import them. But in this case, of course, the seals and the calligraphy was found and used. So, but yeah, I always try and use all my photographic elements. Black bamboo, brushstrokes of emptiness. This is a bit of a favourite that's been featured in a few places. Black tulip, even before the dusk. So this is well, it's all ink painting. It's a combination of two ink paintings actually that I put together, but love the colours in that one. Born to ride the storm of fire and rain. So this was a windmill I photographed, and it was put on the background, or put on the foreground of a photo I took of a major bushfire down here. So you can see up here that was actually the sun that was hidden by this big smoke cloud that was going over. Born wild, the sweet taste of no regrets. So this was something I enjoyed doing. It was still life, but I enjoyed taking actually it was mostly done in the app in Snapseed, the actual fruit, but then I imported it into Photoshop and wrote calligraphy. I really enjoy that one. I like the simplicity of it. And this is something completely in the other direction, using a lot of photographs that I took and texture. Actually interested, the texture came off a rusty old petrol pump. So it's amazing where you can find these textures, just photograph them and use them later on. Just a simple one. This one, it was a photograph, but once again, I took it right back, make it as minimal as possible and put it on some texture. It's one of my early haiku I had published in Frog Pond way back, but Charcoal Alley, children flick marbles into the light. This is an ink painting of mine, simple one. Charred cedars, how cold the white of early snow. But once again, you can see that white space is an important aspect, just having enough room for the different elements to breathe. This was done all in a phone, in my cell phone, and just using photographed, images blurred slightly, and then you're just using collage, which is something you can use on your phone gallery, usually, bringing images together. Walking towards all the colours of hope. That was actually written in the middle of the pandemic, or was still in it, of course, but when we were locked down here, we weren't locked down for long, luckily for us, but we've been very fortunate here in Tasmania. This is me just going completely crazy. A whole lot of seals and chops I collected. I just love to look at them. And they're on the foreground of mostly, well, it's all ink painting elements that have all been brought together. crack of thunder, ravens press down on the earth. Another watercolor, using the same sort of elements as before and getting quite minimal. This is a still life I created with my camera, so it's all done in camera, just moving the camera slightly. I wanted to get a sort of a movement of the pair. This is actually a watercolor, just that's been inverted. Once again, a technique. I like the black on white. A billabong is an Australian term for like a small sort of creek, an area where the creek widens, which often dries right out in summer. And a flame tree is, of course, what it says. It's a beautiful red tree in Australia. Dying moth on a sudden breeze flutters. Combination of photograph and different elements. Election barbecue, the fattest sausage bursts its skin. I'll leave you to think about that one. But yeah, just a simple, I like to doodle with my pen and ink. That's fun as well. I've been known to draw cartoons of people and stuff like that. So just I might do a bit of that with Haiga at some point soon. Wow, there's a lot of different textures, a lot of photograph of an old windmill. Love the colours in this one. Watercolor, done on a scroll-like shape, and as you see, handwritten calligraphy, all brought together, all the elements brought together in Photoshop. A last strum, the dark goes deeper into the strings. This is obviously something very quite abstract, which I quite enjoyed. Just splashes of ink. Sometimes, you know, with imagery, the more minimal you are, the better it can be sometimes, especially if you want the haiku to shift and link with the image. This one was a photograph of a train carriage. And I imported the man with the bowler hat later. So it was a bit of a vision that I saw that I could create. Midnight passing, only a shadow in a dream. Another favourite, a photograph that's had a lot of textures on it, and little boy or the man inserted. Death of a friend, the empty moonstroke, still in my brush. Just using more background, beautiful sort of glassy, shiny background, and a heron, to me, sort of kind of work well with the image. Early snow, floating brush marks of silence. Photograph on textures, pretty much all done once again in the phone and Snapseed. Old horses, days of endless rain in their eyes. So that won the Heron's Nest Award a few years back. And my attempt at some kanji for horse. Thanks, I see Faye clapping there, thank goodness. And the red block was just, I stamped that first. There's actually a video on my channel of me doing one of these, and then a whole series of them. Oof, big watercolor, left untouched, but just put on some white paper with my calligraphy. Some cliffs quite close to me in the Tasman Peninsula area, they call it. Children's laughter, a weekend father with sticks in his hair. So yeah, lots of textures, photographs, all sorts of things in there, colours. This is the platypus in our dam. I say our dam, our little lake, which is just outside my window. Tiny silver bubbles in layers of pink. So it's quite rare to have a platypus or to even see them. They're usually, they only come out at night generally, and you don't see them. They're round built-up areas. But they actually, people don't realise they travel over land. They will travel. They can run along the ground, but they spend most of the time in the water. So he comes and visits us every week or so, which is great. Woodcarver, the tight curve in a goshawk's wing. So this was actually the background was a mistake. I actually I shot this with my camera accidentally. It just blurred all the background. So, but I love the look of it. So I just inserted a previous photo I had of the raven onto it. And then you'll see here, I use some of the background from the image. I quite often do that. I use just to change things up in the background. I'll just insert the background, some of the photo again, and then just drop the opacity down. This was all done on the phone. Bit of a new favourite. Yeah, just some flowers shot in a fountain, actually, in a city park. But I had the idea of sort of changing the colour, making it very sort of gold-like, and then I had this haiku, and I thought, oh yeah, that works for that. So, and probably getting right at the end here now, but morning Tai Chi, once more stepping into clouds. So this was actually a leaf photographed. This was all done on the phone as well. It was floating in the water, so I've just sort of adjusted it to take the water background right out. And here, ta-da, is the cover. What's the latest draft of Cloud Hands, which is hopefully will be the cover of my book if I stop playing with it and coming up with other ideas and use this. So there's some design elements in there. Actually, there's a couple of elements from my previous book that I purposely put in from other covers. There's a little bit of the bone carver, and there's some of the bushfire moon, and even some broken starfish. So we'll just go out of that. So just getting near the end, but I just wanted to quickly show you a couple of, just for interest, some examples of where my crazy imagination goes. So this was, on the left, you'll see the photo here was taken in a restaurant. I just love the shape of the flowers. I'm not even sure what they are. They're in bulb, of course, about to bloom. So black background. I actually used the original seal, not a stamp of it, but the actual stone of the seal. Copper-coloured moon, robes of skin slipping into darkness. I just love the idea of robes of skin slipping, and of course the copper-coloured moon. So I should have made it a bit bigger. So that's that one. So just as another example of extreme taking, I mean, why would you take a photograph of a large glowing bulb in a local supermarket? But this is where I ended up. Giant bush moths, their red eyes glow with afterlife. So I just basically took it right back to it. Felt like a drawing, and then inserted red in there. Once I did that, I had the idea of red eyes glowing, and red is often, Peggy wrote a beautiful poem about red leaf into the afterlife, something like that. So that's where that one went. So I'll just close that off. And what I'd like to do, probably getting close to my time, is just take you out with another film, which is a bit of a favourite. And I will just So wabi-sabi is one of the haiku aesthetics we're most familiar with. There's a lot of them, of course. It's a beauty of things imperfect. It's beauty of things modest and humble. It is a beauty of things unconventional. So this series, I took some still life. I'll show it to you in a minute. I took some still life photographs, took them right back to black and white. And then I had this idea of just inserting almost like brush-like marks of red onto them. I just love the way this was the first one I did. It's an artichoke flower. I actually did large prints of this, 3 of them, and they sold at an exhibition. And I've still got one framed, which I love. So I'll just go to the film. Ink flows into the roots of now. Salt through the veins on a crimson tide. Music of lotus seed in the breeze. Lifelines touch deep in the void. The heat of chili on your lips. A sway in the lightness of being. A red thread flows into the world. Seed pods dragging down the sky. Two become one under a blood moon. So that's where I'll leave it. Can't figure out how to get back to a full screen, but stop share. All right, I'll stop share. There we go. Hopefully everyone's still there. Thank you. Sound of two hands clapping silently.
Beautiful, beautiful work, Ron. Lovely,
Thanks.
lovely work. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Gary.
So good.
It was very captivating.
If there's any time, I don't mind taking a few questions. If people wanted to unmute themselves and ask a question.
It makes me want to be a photographer.
Very good photographer, Gary. I've seen your work.
I've seen yours. Wow. It's astonishing. It's marvelous. Very good.
Thanks.
So questions? You have questions for Ron about his technique or what he's doing or programs he's using? Anybody?
I'm just curious. The last series or last film in the Wabi Sabi ones, you showed it.
Yeah.
You know, on the bottom, your chop, fire moss chop, and then above there, something the other chops. Is it by musicians or what? I was just curious.
No, they're just chops that I've collected. I think that one said nature is beautiful or something like that. They're sort of, because traditionally in Chinese paintings, they'd put a number of seals, and which would mean all sorts of things. Yeah. Nature is beautiful, I think that one was. Yeah.
Thank you. But anyway, you Haiga just speechless.
Thanks. I think I overwhelmed this. I mean, I showed a lot, so it's sort of overwhelming. But that's only a small part of what I've collected over the years. So yeah.
I thought it was lovely. I didn't feel overwhelmed. By the way, if somebody wants to get a shop in our area, San Francisco, you can go to Chinatown and there are people there that will make you chops if you want one.
Yes, yeah. It's a lovely thing to have. Definitely. They can either do your name or you can come up with a name, or ask if you want an artist name, just ask someone who's a mentor or teacher or something. They might give you a name. Hopefully you'll like it.
Can I ask you, you're saying the word chops, is that spelled like it sounds or is it different?
No, it's spelled like it sounds. Chop, C-H-O-P.
Okay, I haven't heard that word before, so.
Well, I think traditionally a seal, there's chops and seals, yeah. And,
Yeah, I've heard them called seals, yeah.
Yeah. So some of them are a personal signature and or a lineage, an artist lineage. Some people, if they're in a lineage of painters, they have a seal for that. Yeah, I think it just adds a design element that I started doing that a long time ago when I was given the artist name, and I always liked adding that little bit of red to a black and white image or a color image. To me, it's just, it's a beautiful aspect of what you can do with Haiga.
I always look for it in your work because I really appreciate it. It is really part of it.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. It's lovely to see you here. Lovely to see you.
Thanks for telling me to come.
Yeah, Becky came along to see me present. So that we met at on the Queen Mary, didn't we, back in 2013?
Yep, 2013, yeah.
Wow, yeah, 7-8 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Haiku North America, for those who don't know.
Yeah. That was amazing for me. I mean, because I've been writing haiku for years and meeting people just online through some of the early forums, and then just be able to meet all these wonderful people face to face. I must admit I was a bit overwhelmed the whole weekend, or it just went like a blur.
I think that was the first time I'd met you in person. So that was.
Yeah, it was, Gary. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And of course, some people have passed on now. Paul McNeil, who was a great friend, wonderful man. I got to meet him. So that was great.
And Carlos, we miss Carlos.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, for those who don't know, Haiku North America happens every other year. And it's happening this year in October. And it's going to be online. The first time we've ever done a Zoom Haiku North America. So you can sign up for that.
Thank you, Ron. That was really, really inspirational. My two loves are poetry and photography, and my challenge though is the technology, because my photography has been mostly darkroom photography until I didn't have access to a darkroom. Now I use my phone a lot, but trying to meld the two is a real challenge technologically for me. But those are beautiful, very inspirational. Makes me want to go learn more about it, how to do that.
Also,
Thank you,
Ron,
Helen.
you might mention your film I think you made for the Haiku Foundation a couple years ago. I think you did it with somebody for the film festival. It is terrific. It's really beautiful.
Oh yeah, that would be Martin Hawes, who's a wonderful photographer, but he's one of these wild men that goes into the wilderness here. He carries all his food for about 2 weeks, and he solo walks in some of the most rugged wilderness that we have in Tasmania. But yeah, he gave me access to his wonderful collection of photographs, and I wrote haiku to them, and we came up with a design element that we both liked, and that's called Imperfections. And then I did another one using his photographs where I just used a different style of haiku presentation, but I can send the links to those.
Those are super, yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce. Thanks. Nice to see you.
Any more questions for Ron?
Well, thanks for all the comments. I haven't been able to read them all yet, but there's some lovely comments in the chat. I'll try and take those in before we zoom out.
Any more questions? Anyone comments?
I have a question just about the technology. You mentioned that you use Snapseed and you mentioned Photoshop. How much do you think you could do if you didn't have Photoshop? I mean, a lot of us don't really quite want to make the investment in Photoshop, but.
Yeah, sure. Look, I understand that. There are some, I've forgotten the name of it now, but there are some quite very good free softwares that are Photoshop-like, in that you can import scanned images and photographs into it and then layer it up. But I guess, yeah, I use my cell phone a lot now too. So just using something like Snapseed, like I keep mentioning, you can do things. And I think when I met Faye at the conference, I put Faye onto some software on my phone. I guess if I couldn't do that, I'd spend more time doing mixed media on paper, which I probably should be doing anyway, or not should be doing, but I'd like to do more of. But yeah, I guess I can understand. I've seen some beautiful work by people that don't have access to Photoshop or some of the more advanced softwares. Photoshop is expensive. You can't even, I've got an old version that I don't have to pay rent for, but the new versions you basically have to pay a fee every month. But it depends what you want to do. I mean, if you're a photographer and you really want to go a long way with your photographs, you can't beat Photoshop. It's not just all about changing an image. So it's, and Gary will know this as well, it's about when you're shooting digital, it's a fairly flat basic image. And when you're basically balancing things, the levels, the white points and the black points are important in digital. And also you might add a bit of brightness and contrast. You might pump the color up a little bit, just so it represents more what you want or what you saw, because digital can be a bit flat sometimes. I used to work for the government digitizing the film and also the art collections in the archives here in Tasmania. So I learned a lot about digital realm and how to photograph, capture and process really a digital image process. But having said that, you can still take a very good image if you're doing all the right, if you're getting everything right with your camera. Yeah.
You can also get a program called On1, ON, the number 1. It's another software program like Photoshop. You don't have to rent it. You can buy it as a standalone program. It's got a lot of built-in presets and textures, and you can blend skies, and it does all kinds of cool things. It's deep in its own way that Photoshop is. You can also, besides using a phone, you can get a notepad. I know a lot of artists that don't, you know, because a notepad, it also has a built-in camera, so you have a little bigger screen. You can capture, you know, a leaf on the sidewalk. You can go into Snapseed, and there's a whole bunch of other ones that are free. And sometimes maybe they're even $1.99 and you can own them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Thanks.
they change you can apply filters, and they do all kinds, you know, a lot of it's one click. So you'll just do one thing to it and you'll go, oh, wow, that's cool. Especially if, like Ron says, if you're keeping things simple, if they're graphic, you're not making them too complicated, they can be quite lovely. In some ways, you don't really need to make it complicated to make a great, you know, art image.
Yeah, dead right, Gary. Yeah, and I should have mentioned that I do have an iPad, and I do have software on that, and some of it is free, and some of it, like you said, is only $1. And there are a couple I use quite a lot actually that have lovely textures and things that you can do and change the images. And really, you're not limited. Yeah, creativity, you can go whatever direction you want, and once you have the tools. Yeah.
The bottom line is just play, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Photograph a simple thing, play with the textures, play with the filters, you know, exaggerate the shape of the form, just mess around with it. It's actually quite fun just to play with. So
Ron, I have a question. If you do a watercolor or a simple painting, do you then take a photograph of it and then play around with it in Photoshop, or?
Yeah, it depends. Well, it's certainly, you have to, if you want to put something in a Photoshop, it has to be captured in a digital way. So it's either with a camera or in nice daylight if you can, or with a scanner. So I've got a very basic A4 scanner. If the watercolor's bigger than A4, then I'll shoot it with the camera. Yeah, watercolors, I try not to adjust them too much. Once they're in the digital realm, they probably need a little brightness and contrast, but that's pretty much about all. Because if you want it to represent a watercolor on your image. But having said that, I've completely done the opposite other times and mixed a couple of watercolors together in the digital realm. Yeah.
So how could you get more texture into, say, a watercolor? Could you, or?
Sometimes depending on the piece, I mean, it might be some texture that I've photographed. So it might be, or it might be some rice paper I've scanned, or a nice texture, as I say, of a photograph, and then I scan that, and then it's imported into Photoshop, and then you might have the watercolor in the foreground and the texture that you've created in the background.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah.
And you can buy textures online. There's a lot of people that create textures just for sale for artists to use in their artwork. So.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yep.
What version of Photoshop are you using?
Sorry, what was that, Richard?
What version of Photoshop do you use, if I may ask?
I'm just using CS5, which is, yeah, quite a few old. It's old now, mainly because it's the only one that'll run. Well, I have to wind. I've got an iMac, and I have to keep Sierra on it because after Sierra, it went to a 64-bit, and it won't run the old Photoshop I've got. So I don't want to pay the monthly rental on a new version of Photoshop. So I've got an older version that does everything I want and more. So I just use that one. Great questions.
Okay, well, I guess we're going to wind this up. We've gone our time, I think. So Ron, thank you for coming and joining.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.